Hi everyone, welcome to another Lumio Palooza session. This one is going to be really, really special. I'm super excited to talk about a topic that we all really need to spend lots of time thinking about, and that is making sure that we're making sure that our lessons are inclusive and accessible for each and every one of our learners. We've got some really great stories coming to your way, but just some housekeeping first. I want to remind everyone that throughout our session today, please put any questions that you have in the chat. If they're questions for the Lumio team or question for our ambassador, we'll make sure that we get those answered for you. And just a reminder as well, we do have a Lumio Palooza social media sharing challenge going on as well. So what does that mean for you? All you need to do is, if you see something on the screen today that you like, or you hear a comment made that was interesting to you, go ahead, quickly jot it down. And at the end of the session, all you need to do is post across any of your preferred social media platforms, whether that's Facebook, you can use our Lumio Educators Facebook group, you can use Instagram, Twitter, X, or LinkedIn. And as many posts as you make will get you entered to win a gift card. We'll be announcing a few winners at the end of the day today. All you need to do is make sure that you're tagging Lumio Social and you're using the hashtag LumioPalooza2026. Remember, you can make as many posts as you would like. Those are unlimited entries into our contest. So remember, if you see something you like, take a screenshot. If you hear something that's interesting, jot it down and post about it along the way. And then you can post it in our Facebook group, Lumio Educators, if you're not part of that group yet, or across your preferred social media platform. So with that, I'm going to bring on a couple of my friends on screen with us here. So first and foremost, I'd like to introduce Rachel. Rachel is one of our ambassadors from Toronto. Rachel, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hello, my name is Rachel Gautreau. I'm from Toronto, Ontario. I teach diagnostic kindergarten, and I enjoy making lessons inclusive for all the learners that I have.
Perfect. Thanks for being here, Rachel. And I also have brought my dear friend Shay with me. Shay, if you'd like to turn your mic on and give us a quick introduction.
Hi, everybody. My name is Shay Hill. I'm an education consultant at Smart Technologies, and I cover all of Canada. I'm also a former Ontario teacher, and I love to talk about all things inclusivity, accessibility, special education, and all the ways that we can really, get our learning accessible to all of our students. So really excited to be here today.
Thank you both for being here. If you guys need any information or support, stories, examples on anything to do with accessibility, these are your two gals to go to. They are the pros. They have so many great stories, and I'm super lucky to be able to present Back to the Inclusive Future with them today. So let's get into it. Back to the Inclusive Future. This is us. If you need to reach us at any point, I'm going to leave this on screen here for just a moment here. We've got Rachel, our ambassador from Toronto, myself, my name is Michelle, or most people call me Mish, and I'm our learning and community designer. My email there is on the screen, and if you'd like to connect with me on LinkedIn, or I also have an Instagram where I share a variety of Lumio tips and tricks. And then Shay as well is one of your contacts at Smart and Lumio. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. What is on our agenda today? First and foremost, we're really here to talking about powering up accessibility. There are so many great things that we can do with our students, but what can we really do? What tools can we use to make sure that every student is able to access the information that we're giving them? So we're going to go through a variety of features that you can use in Lumio that really bring in that inclusivity to support your students, like audio, immersive reader. We've got AAC symbols in here as well, screen reader compatibility, so many different things you can do. And then we're going to bring it all back for some strategies that you can apply this school year with your students. All right, so before we get started, I'd love to do a shout out, and what we're going to do is I'm going to have you all join my lesson live time. So I'm going to drop my join link here in the chat for you guys, and I'm going to pop it on the screen as well. And once you join my shout out, the question that I have for all of you is, what comes to mind when you think about using technology for inclusivity? And while you guys are joining my lesson and answering that question on the screen, I'm going to let Shay and Rachel here chat with us a little bit about what is so interesting about a shout it out.
Fantastic. So shout it out is something that I enjoy using, especially when I taught virtual diagnostic and virtual DD. It allows my students to have a voice when they need that extra wait time. Maybe they have an ADHD diagnosis. Maybe they have something in their IP that says they need extended time to respond to things. Maybe they are more of a learner who just would prefer to not be identified. That's their idea. So you can make it a shout it out so it doesn't say the names. You can make it anonymous. It gives them a chance to share their voice without that label on them that that's their idea. Everyone has a chance to share in their own time. And one of my favorite words in the New Zealand for autism actually says in their own time and space. So it allows everyone a chance to have their own time to get to where they need to be, whatever their abilities are.
I definitely agree with that, Rachel. I think that Shout It Out is a amazing low risk environment so that all students have that opportunity to contribute. And rather than only hearing from those few really brave students who are always raising their hands and love to talk, we have more students who are comfortable participating. I love the way that you can ask students to contribute via text or images because it really gives that flexibility in how they express their thinking and really makes us a tool that all age groups can use as well.
I love it. So let's take a look at what some of our participants here have said. The question was, what comes to mind when you think about using technology for inclusivity? Audio recording responses, differentiated activities using tech. Technology can bring new ways to see the same objectives, but also provide meaningful movement or brain breaks that still relate to the lesson. Inclusive technology solutions are good for everyone. We can all benefit from immersive reader and attach audio and audio instructions. That is so true. Provide ways to give everyone access to learning. Fun. I love that. Simple, straightforward. It's fun. I love that answer. Engaging, choices and access. It is so important. We're going to talk a little bit more about choices later on, but it is super important that we're offering them choices, that we're differentiating our learning. We've got a couple folks saying differentiation and making sure all students can access the lesson and reach the target learning outcomes. So much great participation. Thank you so much, everyone, for being in here. And this is a really great way also why I love Shout It Out is I work in Chicago Public Schools, which means I had enormous class sizes. And there just isn't a way every single time that I ask a question to call on all of my students. So this is a really great way to make sure everyone has the opportunity, especially if maybe raising their hand just isn't their preferred way of communicating. Now they've got a different entry point. And like Shay said, it's super low stakes. So I love that. Thanks everyone for kind of getting us going with this conversation. And so you notice there's a little bit of a difference here, a couple different ways that you can kind of participate in a discussion in Lumio. A moment ago, we did a Shout It Out, and on your screen, you notice all you could really do was you had your submission box and you could type text. Now, I set my Shout It Out to only allow for text, but there is an option where you can upload images as well. But when we think about UDL and we think about making all lessons accessible, what's really important to also consider is giving our students multiple means of expression. And that's where the Lumio feature whole class whiteboard comes in. It moves much more beyond pencil and paper, and it's going to give our students opportunities to think in so many different ways and answer the question beyond just one simple answer through text or writing. So I'm going to move here to my next slide. And what I'll do here is I've asked everyone a simple question. So how might we give students more than one way to participate, respond, or create? Now, we're adults here talking about accessibility. So there's really just kind of a sentence format that we can use to answer this. But imagine that I've asked you a question. You guys are my students, and I've asked you a question of what would be a helpful invention that we can have in schools? And you would be able to write or draw, bring in an image, and there's different ways that you'd be able to answer that. So in a moment, what I'm going to do here is I'll convert this to a whole class whiteboard. I'll go to my magic wand and I'll select whole class whiteboard. And for those of you that are connected to my lesson, you'll now notice on the left side of your screen, you've got access to a toolbar. So you can grab the pencil and you can write, you can grab the text box and you can click on the screen to type. And there's also a gallery here with options for stickers to react, shapes. You have a safe image search, or for the students that maybe typing or writing is not easy, there's also an ability for a microphone where they can record their responses if maybe that's their preference. So I'll give everyone just a moment here to interact with that screen. And while you're doing so, I'll divert back to my friends Rachel and Shay to talk a little bit about what this means to them as they're teaching in an accessible classroom.
Definitely. I love the whole class whiteboard. I like to think of even those really special situations where we have maybe deaf or hard of hearing students, since they can't communicate with their voice as often or as easily in the classroom, they might not be able to talk to a partner or talk to a table group the same way. I find that any seamless visual communication is really helpful to both the teacher, the student, and then also their peers. So whether it's that whole class whiteboard where they're interacting with people within their class, or just feeling like they belong and can participate in the same way. I think it's really impactful. So, for example, if I had a learning goal like understanding the water cycle, do I really need every student to give an oral presentation on that? Or can I have students explain it via a diagram or record a voice recording on a whole class whiteboard or by annotating an image on a whole class whiteboard? And when we provide those multiple options for students, we're really uncovering that, everything that just traditional written work or spoken work doesn't capture. There's so many other ways to do that.
And so for one of my students this year, I had a student who was blind, and I had to really rethink of how I was including everyone. I used a lot of visuals, I used some audio, but I didn't use the audio features as much until this year. For example, for our morning circle, we have students check in where they click and they drag. They use a whole class whiteboard and they click and they drag their photo to say, I'm here at school. I was trying to rethink how I would include her in that. So what I did is I did the page audio and I did an audio for I am here at school on her face, and we would lead her to that and she would press that. But I also allowed her to record her singing. So we just pressed the button, and because the board is so fantastic, it just recorded her singing, and she loves to hear herself every morning when we do that page. It's just part of our daily routine now.
That is such a sweet story. That's so special, the way that not only are you giving her a way to access it, but it's so personal, and you really can make these things such a personalized touch within Lumio. So a couple other things that I love in a whole class whiteboard is you'll notice now that I have a collection of everyone's responses on my screen. And now I'm wondering, who did this one belong to? Lumio lessons, empower each student to decide. I'm wondering who did that. And that was Roy. And so I'm able to take accountability of exactly who made that. And then also, let's just say my students maybe are engaged and I'm ready to capture that attention back. Something that I can do as the teacher, in the top right corner, I can toggle off that editing access, and you'll see now on your screen, you can go ahead and just look. You can't touch anymore, and I've got that control back to me, but I can just as easily turn that back on. So whole class whiteboard allowed all of you, some of you were typing, some of you were recording, some of you were bringing in images, and that's really helpful to make sure everyone was able to use their best way to answer the question. For myself included, I'm not a great test taker, but if you just come and talk to me about the subject, I can talk on and on and on and on. I think we're all really great talkers here, and I think that would be the best way that I can represent myself. If you ask me to type you an essay, it's not going to go very well. And so that brings me to Immersive Reader, which supports so many different types of learners, whether you are an emerging reader, a struggling reader, a language learner, whatever it is that you might be. Immersive Reader is a great tool, and it's actually owned by Microsoft, and it's embedded right into Lumio, and it's going to work on any typed text that's in a lesson. So you'll notice that right here, my text is actually a text box. And so on the left side of my screen, I've got this little icon that has a little book and an audio next to it. And it's the same that this big image that I have on the right. And that's letting me know that I can access Immersive Reader on this page. So let me show you a quick little example of a passage that I've brought in for my students and what Immersive Reader is going to look like. So we might be reading this story about a bear in the rain. Now, this could have been traditionally a passage that I would have printed for my students. Maybe it was something that I had in a book. But again, this might not apply to all my learners, but this is what we're learning about today. So how can everyone access it? So here's what I can do. Again, this was typed text on my screen. So that Immersive Reader button is activated. So I can click on it and it's going to find the text. I'll go ahead and click on it, and it's going to bring me to this new page with my text nice and enlarged. There are so many things that you can do in Lumio with Immersive Reader, and they all break down into helping different kinds of students. And I was talking to Shay a little bit this morning, and Shay has a huge inside scoop of how each single thing you can do in Immersive Reader helps. So Shay, as I click on each button, I'd love for you to kind of reiterate the conversation that we had this morning.
Yeah, definitely. So, of course, you can see that you can change the text size. Now, that's great for students with low vision or just students who want to see something closer up. It's kind of a built in zoom. And same with that increase or decrease spacing. That's something that we see a lot on personal learning plans or individual education plans, whatever you call it in your state or province. Then we have different fonts. And what I love about the different fonts is I actually had someone mention this to me recently. They like to change the font because their student is, an emerging reader and they don't recognize the way that the A is written in certain fonts. So we can change it to help our emerging readers that way. And then we also have the themes where you can change to dark mode if you're low vision. And then me and Mish had a great conversation about how our dyslexic students can use the light blue or a pastel yellow or even that cream color is really much better for those students with dyslexia because certain fonts and certain backgrounds and kind of color combinations are much easier for them to read and get that information from.
Thank you so much, Shay. And I know, Rachel, when you and I were chatting last week, you shared a little bit about how Immersive Reader has showed up for you in your classroom. Can you tell us a little bit about that, Rachel?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have students they have a lot of different first languages before they're even speaking. They're emergent communicators and they also speak different languages at home. So when they come in, we're not always sure which language they're going to start with or how they're going to communicate. And they are all not usually yet speaking or reading. So we're working on U-fly scales. We're working on just even making the sounds with the speech and language therapist. So a lot of times we will just start with letter sounds, the way we form our mouth. And so looking at this, I had to look up Trinig, it's hard to say it, but it's an Ethiopian language, and they actually had it. And it was really hard to find. And things like languages that we don't always see, being able to translate that, and even for families to come in for curriculum night, it was so helpful for parents to see that this is a resource that we have. We can assign it to the family. They can practice it at home, which is really helpful. And it's something they're really excited about because they don't always get to see that and what their child is learning and get to access that at home if they're new to the country. And for my students, they love pressing the buttons and seeing the board maker symbols. That is so exciting to them because we use those with their AAC. So suddenly they have something they're familiar with. They see it. It's something they're already, it's usually their visuals, and they're such visual learners that this sticks out in their mind. So we have students that started reading and just started understanding the text by the end of the year because of those board maker symbols. And because it was auditory as well, our student who is blind could participate at the same time.
I love that, Rachel. And I think that those picture communication symbols are also really important because English as a language is pretty tricky. I mean, I saw earlier on the page, it said the word would, as in tree wood. And we also have another would, like I would go to the store or something. So I think that's really helpful too, because I also taught lots of students who were coming in as English language learners. And I think that the fact that that picture communication system symbols kind of really mirror an augmentative alternative communication system or an AAC makes things really easy for them because English is a difficult language to learn.
Absolutely. And you notice I did have someone in the chat that specifically asked about French. So I went ahead and chose the France dialect of French here. And you can see that I translated the whole document, and it does let me toggle between the original, which I had in English, and then go back to French. So if I'm a student learning that language, I might try in one language and say, uh-oh, you know what? Not totally confident yet. Let me go back. This is a really great tool to use. And you'll notice that if you're still logged into my Lumio lesson, as I changed things on my screen, it didn't change on yours. And that's because this is meant to be supporting you as a learner, and my needs might be different than yours. So being able to make things that are Immersive Reader compatible in Lumio does allow for all your students to access the tools within Immersive Reader that apply to them. So a couple things we just didn't mention here was you did have a line focus if you wanted students to maybe focus in as an emergent reader. There was also some grammar options in here to identify parts of speech, lots of different things that you can dive into later as well. So just for time's sake, I'm going to go ahead and exit out of here. And we're back in our presentation. So now I was able to read that passage alongside my classmates if maybe I needed that support, whether it was an emerging reader or maybe I was learning a new language. Now I have those tools available to me. Go ahead, Shay.
I was just going to say that I think that immersive reader is such an easy and low lift way to honor learner variability. I always like to say the phrase, what's good for one is good for all. And, we may have only a few students that really need the immersive reader, but there's always students who might be stuck on a word or even just want to teach themselves how to pronounce a new word. So there's so many great things about immersive reader.
And we're seeing lots of great comments in the chat as well. I'm seeing a great conversation about using it to even teach vocabulary in a new language. So thank you for everyone in the chat that's engaging there. So our next point here is audio. And audio is a very big umbrella term in Lumio because there are so many ways to use audio. You can use it as a teacher to provide instruction. You can attach audio. And then as you guys saw in my whole class whiteboard, you were also able to use audio as students. And what does that mean to us in inclusive learning? Rachel, I would love for you to chat a little bit about that. What is the ability to use audio meant for you in your classroom? And then I'm going to give a couple of visual examples here.
I think it's just been a game changer for our classroom. First of all, it's a lot louder than my own voice. When it's a very multi-sensory environment and there's a lot of different sounds coming in, I find the students tune in far quicker when I have page recorded audio. So one of the things I do on every page, just so my students can all participate, is record what that page is about. So just like you would insert text into an image for students who are low vision or blind, I insert sort of just an intro. Good morning, students. This is, and I'll say the date, and I'll say, we are doing this and this activity. Let's say good morning to our friends, or I'll say something like that. And I love how quick and easy it is to just record a new audio for that page if I have to change it up. And then when I insert a little audio button, I can insert it to letters. If I'm doing letter sounds with students, I can insert it to pictures. And so all students are able to access what is that visual? What are we doing? They love to come up and press the audio themselves. If I make it a nice big button, what I love is that you can stretch it and make it bigger for those students that have fine motor difficulties. You can make that one page just about that sound and model that for students. And you can even have a video of yourself doing the sound on the next page. But the audio really changes everything. For those students that aren't able to see all those visuals, this really makes it accessible and they're able to participate and they feel like part of the lesson.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that. And so just a couple of examples here, something as simple as instructional audio you can add on any page. And you'll notice that pops up at the top right corner of my screen here. So for this is just a quick initial sort sound for my students. I might use it simply to remind my students that, hey, D makes D and F makes F. And so that could be that auditory reminder for them, or I'm simply just giving them those instructions. And that's a pretty common accommodation that you might see on a student's IEP on their learning plan, is to have the instructions reiterated to them multiple times. So instead of yourself standing there and saying it multiple times, and maybe they're working on this, you're working on having your students be a little bit more independent, they can have your voice right there reminding them the sounds and what their process might be. You might even say, when you're done with the game, go ahead and click refresh, and you're able to start one more time. And one thing that I love, this is not relevant to using audio, but one thing that I love in regards to supporting my students is that SuperSort does give you the ability, once they're done, to go ahead and refresh, because that the ability to start one more time and that repeatability is really helpful for them. But also, as I think about progress monitoring, I'm able to go through individual students through here and see how everyone is doing. So I might open up, let's see, Roy, I'm going to pick on you, and I hope that's okay. I can see exactly how Roy is doing, and maybe Roy played this game a little while ago and I have that data, and maybe Roy last week had a more difficult time. And each Lumio lesson that I do, Roy's game saves right in the system for me. So I'm able to compare week over week or day over day, however often it is that we're doing, for that progress monitoring. And I'm able to see exactly how my students are doing, which is really nice.
Misha, I just wanted to quickly jump in too and say something I love about the activity that you were showing as well. I think it's a really great example of reducing cognitive load so that the students can really focus on the learning goal, because in that activity you had, the learning goal was to match those things. And we all need reminders from time to time. So if the student's able to just focus on completing the task rather than remembering all the stuff they learned in the lesson before, because they have that audio reminder from the teacher, I think it really reduces those linguistic barriers, especially for our multilingual students.
And even for our students with ADHD. So, for example, my daughter has an IEP, and on her IEP, it is with the instructions. She doesn't often grasp the audio instructions right away, but if she hears them again, maybe that was too busy when the instructions were being played, she can just go back and listen to it again. You always have those students that at the end, what are we doing? And they'll ask the next person, and then that's distracting kids. And it's hard with that executive functioning to just get started. So, having that prompt to get started, that's a big part of the IEP often. That prompt, just the executive functioning and that accommodation is huge.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing about your daughter as well, Rachel. See, it's all around us, and sometimes we just need to like have that moment to ourselves to like really hear it one more time. Sometimes myself, I need that extra opportunity to process what was just said to me on my own terms. And so having it right there is very, very helpful. So another way that you can use audio, now this is not a specific example that really demonstrates anything that's like differentiated, but just a cute little activity that has some attached audio. So here the students are pretending to work in a donut shop, and our ambassador, Michelle Conway, made this really cute activity. Michelle, if you're here, shout out to you. Thanks for letting me use this. But they're working in a donut shop, and they have to assemble this box of donuts with the word family that ends in at. And so they'll click on each individual donut. You'll notice that each one has a little audio attached to it, and they'll listen in.
Pet.
Oh, that one was pet, so that might not be the right one.
Bat.
Bat, and that one fits in. So again, this was just a regular activity, but Rachel and Shay, if you guys could talk a little bit about what does it mean to be able to attach audio to objects and how that can support students as well.
Yeah, for sure. So a lot of my students are working on, for example, just letter sounds, or just making part of their IP goal was understanding that letters make sounds, because a lot of them can line up the alphabet and they're putting those things in order, and they're able to match, for example, uppercase and lowercase letters. But the sound part is huge. We work a lot with the speech and language pathologist. Some of them haven't made sounds yet. So being able to attach it to a specific letter and have them hear the sound, see the sound, have all of those things come together is huge. And then we model the sound. So we do a total communication approach in our classroom. We have a visual, we have sound thanks to this audio, we have the modeling of the behavior, and we really try to incorporate through this the whole day with their AACs. If it's a word, if it's a sound, we do core words in our class. So if I have the word go, I'm going to be doing the sign language for go. I'm going to be listening to the word, and we're going to be showing them how to say the word and using it in context, which is huge.
Rachel covered so much of it. I just think that the attached audio to object is a fun way to kind of make your own games in Lumio. So like you mentioned, Michelle Conway had made this herself. I've seen a few other ambassadors make things similar. And I think it's cool because it's a unique way to customize and make your own games aside from the 12 templates that we already have. And, you know, those audio supports are really simple, but they're an incredibly powerful UDL, or universal design for learning strategy. So they reduce barriers for students. They add a lot of fun. They also add a lot of learner independence, because if these donuts were just words, not every student's going to be able to participate in the same way. So I think it just really makes those flexible pathways for accessing the content and for them to demonstrate that understanding and have fun while doing it.
Thank you so much. And there's a great question in the chat asking, can we get data from this activity? So actually, here's what you can do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over back to my magic wand, and I can convert this into an individual handout. And so now on your screen, you each have your own copy of that game, which is really nice because now I'm able to watch all of you at work, which, if you've been in Lumio recently, you've noticed that this might be a little update here. This has been a highly requested feature for our product team, is to have this kind of like live dashboard to really see all of our students at work in their handouts. And then what you can do is another new feature. You can actually export all of these individual handouts as a PDF. Again, really great for student portfolios, for progress monitoring. If you have a IEP meeting coming up or a conference, when you click export PDF, which is currently a beta feature, you can either export all of your students' work, or maybe I just have a meeting coming up maybe with Devin's mom, and I need to pull that up there, and I can just pull that for Devin's parent-teacher conference if needed. And then you'll see that as my students are working, it looks like some of you guys are idle, looks like it's in privacy mode, but it looks like this student here, I have the student names hidden. I can pull it up here and I can click into Valerie's work, and I can see what Valerie here is up to. So I hope that answers your question. You certainly can see an inside scoop of how your students are doing in this activity. One more way that you can use audio. So when we did our whole class whiteboard, y'all had the opportunity to engage in my brainstorming web by recording yourselves. But we're talking a little bit about language practice. And instead of doing like when I learned Spanish in school, it was like all vocab lists and worksheets. But I would have loved an opportunity to be able to really use my voice in practice. So by digitizing this activity here, maybe they're learning a new language, record yourself with a sentence or question that this student might be saying to you. What do you think about that, Rachel and Shay?
So even for my students that are just making sounds, sometimes they're so excited to participate in a song that we've just played, or if we're singing during a music class, it's so fun to be able to record them doing that because it may not happen often. So when it does happen, it's fun to be able to record that and then play it back for them. The looks on their faces, you can even put their picture on the page so they see themselves reflected there and they see that they're making progress in their IEP goals. Any kind of communication is communication, whether it's sound, gestures, all of that. So we celebrate every little win or growth. It's a big growth in our class.
I love that. And I was going to say something similar. I think this is a really great strength-based assessment approach because it allows the student to also, the teacher and student can go back and revisit how they were pronouncing something specific or reading how their fluency was at the beginning of the term versus the end of the term. So it's really great for accountability too, and also for student agency, because if they're having the opportunity to record themselves with a sentence or question, they might also, be able to take their time, re-record if they know they can do it better, and also self-monitor that progress too.
One of the other things we had to do this year, which didn't exactly make sense for my learners, was do a lot of reading assessments. And that doesn't always work for my students. And I always hate scoring them that they didn't achieve this and they didn't do that. So one of the nice things is there has been an adapted tool by the Bloorview School Authority, and they created a reading assessment that uses BoardMaker visuals. So I was able to put it in as a PDF page and use the immersive reader, and students were able to record themselves making the sounds. Even if it wasn't exactly what the question had asked, we did a lot of that through Lumio, and it was a great way to show parents and show administration that look, we're doing this assessment, we're just adapting it so it works for our students.
That is amazing. There's just so many ways that we can really give our students the opportunity to shine no matter what their individual needs are. And again, doing this in Lumio, we've done just now in the last 30 minutes 4 or 5 different activities, and all of our work is saving in this file. So as I think about being maybe a special education teacher, and I've got that IEP meeting coming up, it's progress monitoring season, I have all this work saving in this file for me to come back to, and I've given you all these different opportunities to engage with my lesson, and I can go back and review all of it in this one really easy way. So as we're kind of reaching our time here, I have one more thing that I want to share with you before we start to close out, and that is that our Lumio product team is really at the forefront of trying to make Lumio as accessible as possible. And a really big focus this past year is to make Lumio screen reader compatible. You've noticed that the toolbar for us looks just a little bit different. But also we've added alt text features to Lumio as well so that we can support students. And in a moment, I'm going to let Rachel talk here because I know that she had an experience with a student this past year as well who really could have benefited from this as well. And that is the ability to have Lumio be screen reader compatible. So we are going to share this presentation with you at the end here. I see that comment in the chat. I was just about to say, because on the next slide here, we have 2 incredible one-pagers that our team has put together on how you can design in Lumio to be screen reader compatible. Your traditional left to right, top to bottom. And then once you have an object or text, you can click on it for that drop-down menu. That drop-down menu where historically you would have seen options for grouping, layering, adding text and things like that, adding links. You'll now have an option there to add alt text as well so that screen readers will capture everything on there. And then also we've made a separate one-pager on all the different keyboard shortcuts that you can use as well. Rachel, I would love for you to tell me a little bit about your student that you had this past year that would have benefited from that screen reader support.
So I think one of the ways that it's helpful, there are images everywhere. We use AAC. Often we're using like a BoardMaker symbol that doesn't have text with it. It's built into that symbol. If you are uploading lessons or things like that to Lumio, you may not always have that text. It may come up as a PDF, and so it's not reading an immersive reader. So often if you have an image, now that you can add text to that, when you're having the audio recording and you're having that playing, it allows that student to participate when maybe the text isn't being read or there's no way for them to access it. They can't see it. So they need something that automatically allows them to participate where you can hear it. The thing that I learned the hard way is you have to be careful what you put in there and remember that it's there. So if you add extra text or extra audio somewhere else, you might have it read twice. So you just want to make sure that if you're using that you're really intentional about what you're adding as that alt text, whether it's a word that you want said, whether it's a full sentence. You just want to make sure that it's still accessible for that student and it's not repeating the same thing multiple times, because that can get frustrating to listen to. It can be overstimulating.
Absolutely. So we'll make sure that we share this out with everyone as well. But just really quickly wanted to make sure that you all knew that our Lumio product team is really hard at work to make sure that every feature that we're coming out with is getting closer and closer to being able to be accessible for all of our students. And Screen Reader was a huge moment for that. So as we start to close out here, what is your journey to the inclusive future? So first and foremost, discover the access. So explore all the different tools. I know that we've shown you quite a few different things today. So we've talked about 3 different ways to use audio: instructional audio, the attached audio for a teacher, or student-facing audio. We've talked about immersive reader. We've talked about multiple means of expression using the whole class whiteboard and screen reader. So think and explore all of those different tools, and then think about how you're going to design moving forward for choice and for those experiences that your students will have to really demonstrate their understanding no matter what their needs might be. And then last but not least, that brings you right into that last part of your journey, as you're really, by implementing all these methods, empowering every single voice. You're going to build a classroom where every student can participate because you're giving them multiple means of expression. You're giving them different opportunities to engage and different ways to really express themselves, and also have those supports built right in. You might still give everyone that same super sort game, but how can you design it a little bit more thoughtfully so that every student really is able to access it? So that's really special. And there's so many different ways that our Lumio team has really made it possible for everyone to be there. Now, I know, again, we've shown you so many different features today. And the first place that I would really like for you to start, if you have some questions, is right in the middle of this page. And we're going to send this out here, is the Lumio YouTube page. Why do I say that? We as adults, we need bite-sized information. And so on our Lumio YouTube, you've got like 1 to 3 minute video clips that bring down each feature into each individual video. So if you're like, hey, saw them do an individual handout, how do I do that? Go to our Lumio YouTube, type in individual handout, and you'll see a quick little clip on how to do that. Same with immersive reader. You'll also find on there a playlist with all of our webinars from the past year, Lumio Palooza. All these sessions are being recorded and they'll be there as well. And those webinars are super specific to content, subject, features as well. So you can keep learning more on there as well. And then all the way to the right, you'll notice that we also have an academy. And I'm actually the person behind the scenes that's working on the academy. And I'll give you a little inside scoop, is I am completely revamping our Getting Started with Lumio course. So the one that's in there now, I'm going to totally change it up just to keep things nice and exciting. By the end of the summer, I hope to have that delivered to everyone. And it'll be a really great Getting Started with Lumio course if you kind of want to backtrack and start over. And then at some point this school year, I'm actually going to be building a course specifically on using Lumio for accessibility as well. If you've enjoyed Lumio Palooza, all of our sessions have been hosted by incredible ambassadors just like Rachel. So if you're not part of our ambassador community yet, that's the place that you want to be. You can connect with folks from all over the world. If you haven't noticed, during Palooza, we've had sessions from where were we? We were in the UAE, we were in Botswana, we were in France, we were in Germany, we were in Poland, we were in the US, we were in Canada, we were everywhere. And that is where you can go to get connected with all of those educators. We go in there, we ask different questions. We give you tips and tricks on using Lumio, and also announcements on all the brand new things that are coming. And like I said, that Lumio team, they are so hard at work, and there's so much more coming. So make sure you're a part of that ambassador community. And then now let's take a quick moment to share out. If you saw something that was interesting, if you heard something that was interesting, we would absolutely love for you to share. Take a moment. I'm going to drop the link in the chat for our Lumio Facebook group if you're not part of that group yet. If you took a screenshot, you heard something interesting, we would love for you to share something interesting that you learned. Or if you prefer Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, X, go ahead and share out what you learned today, because we're running that contest and we're going to announce in just a couple hours here our winners for today. You can post as many times as you would like. All you need to do is make sure you're tagging at Lumio Social and using that hashtag LumioPalooza 2026. I love Khadijah's comment there in the chat. I'm super excited to hear all about what you come up with. And if you can, Khadijah, when you're ready, come join us in the Facebook group and tell us how you use this school year. We'd love to hear from you.
If I could just leave a couple lasting words, Mish, too. When I think back to my time in the classroom and all the educators I speak to across Canada, the most inclusive classrooms that they talk about aren't defined by the tools that they use, but by those opportunities for learning that the tools create. So I think that if today's session encourages you to rethink even just one learning activity so that more students could access or participate effectively or succeed in it, then that's a really meaningful step towards creating classrooms where every learner can thrive, just like the classrooms that Rachel is creating right now.
And one of the most important things that I've learned, my students have taught me, is believe that every student is capable. Whether you think they are, whether you're seeing those behaviors or whether you're seeing anything, all behavior is a form of communication. So they are able to communicate with us, even if they're not using words. They're able to participate. We just have to unlock their potential and find that tool or that accessibility feature that helps them use their voice.
Thank you both so much. I'm going to drop 2 links for you here in the chat. The first link that I am putting in right now, that is your survey form. So if you would like to get your certificate for attending the session today and be able to log that credit hour, once you submit that form, give us some feedback here. We'll be able to generate that certificate for you. And the next link that I'm putting in, as you can see here on my screen, that is a copy of our presentation file. And I'm going to leave that there in the chat for you. So I just want to say a huge, huge thank you to Shay and to Rachel. Thank you both so much for being here, for sharing your expertise on making classrooms more inclusive and how we can design our lessons to be more accessible for all of our learners. To all of our participants that are in the chat today, thank you so much for all of your ideas. And we'll see you guys at another Lumiopalooza session. Thank you so much, everyone.